Marvel movie fans have a unique relationship with spoilers. In some circumstances, we avoid them like the plague, but yet we simultaneously can't wait for any small tidbit of information about upcoming Marvel movies. And perhaps no movie in the history of the MCU has generated more hype than Avengers Endgame. And if we had to guess why, it's probably because most of our heroes died at the end of Infinity War. Just a guess though. It's gotten so bad we've even resorted to checking 4chan for rumors, and there is an admittedly compelling set of them floating around out there. But never fear, because we'll debunk some of these surprising and often heartbreaking spoilers. I was doing air quotes. You couldn't see, but I was doing them.
I have sort of in the past have given up things.
What have you done?
Spoilers.
Let's take a look at the source of these particular spoilers involving Avengers Endgame. The original thread was found on 4chan, because of course it was. And it was posted by an anonymous user who claimed to have insider knowledge about the upcoming Avengers movie.
Mark Ruffalo!
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
An anonymous person on 4chan claiming to have spoilers? Okay, go ahead and just end the video right now, because this can't possibly be true. Just kidding. Well, about the video being over anyways. There is one aspect of the source of these spoilers which has given some fans pause. Admittedly, in various fandoms, there is a precedent for genuine spoilers to exist. Many Game of Thrones fans remember the shocking finale in Season 6, in which Tommen Baratheon leaps out of the window of the Red Keep, was leaked previously by an anonymous source, and all of their predictions turned out to be 100% correct. The source of the Endgame rumor has posted spoilers before regarding Avengers Infinity War.
Wait till you see this next one. Everybody dies.
Dude.
Not everybody.
And shockingly enough, they turned out to be accurate. And these weren't just predictable incidents which could be chalked up to mere coincidences either. They were events which shocked even seasoned comic book fans, like the fact that the Red Skull was going to return, and that Thanos would have to sacrifice Gamora in order to obtain the Soul Stone from him. Making the whole thing all the more suspicious was the speed in which the original spoiler-filled thread was deleted from 4chan. But because this is the internet, copies of the alleged spoilers are still floating around out there, and they're not too hard to find. Not only does this source have a track record of accurate predictions regarding Marvel movies, but the claims are just outlandish enough to seem plausible at first glance. In addition, there has long been a rumor floating around that only 2 members of the Avengers will survive the conclusion of Endgame, and these particular spoilers tend to support that claim. However, if you've happened upon these spoilers, don't fret. This wouldn't be the first time an alleged fact about Endgame turned out to not be true. Remember when the internet was convinced the name of the movie itself had been leaked? And yet we're all highly anticipating the movie Avengers Endgame, and not Avengers Annihilation.
Someone who leaks when they shouldn't leak. Who do you think it is?
That's pretty much Ruffalo.
The first spoiler we have states Iron Man reassembles the Avengers and decides to build his own Infinity Gauntlet to undo everything that Thanos did. They recruit Ant-Man to help them travel through time and space using the Quantum Realm to retrieve the Infinity Stones from different time periods. Thanos finds out about their plans and becomes hell-bent on stopping them. Now, the first thing you might notice about this particular spoiler is that it's pretty darn vague. Thanos finds out about their plan and becomes hell-bent on stopping them. Well, duh, who's gonna predict Thanos learns the Avengers are trying to stop him and decides to just let it happen? Or Thanos decides to just let them have the Infinity Stones and dedicate his time to being a Twitch streamer. In the trailer for Avengers Endgame, we saw that Thanos has become a farmer, and is even using his legendary armor to keep birds away from his crops. Farmer Thanos is a familiar figure to comic book fans, but just because he's slowed down at this point doesn't mean he's given up. He accomplished his life's work at the end of Infinity War. Sure, it was a horrible life, which has caused untold pain and torment, and his work wiped out half of all life in the universe, but hey, he got things done. Let's get credit where it's due. Of course, he's taken a well-deserved break at this point, but who would believe for a second that he's not gonna leap back into action if he thinks there is even the slightest chance someone may be trying to undo the decimation? We hesitate to even call that portion a prediction, let alone a spoiler. And the rest of this portion isn't much more surprising. Of course the Avengers are gonna band together in order to defeat Thanos. Captain America and Black Widow have been working together ever since Captain America Civil War wrapped up. Tony Stark and Peter Parker have been maintaining their adorable yet awkward mentor-mentee relationship, and Bruce Banner, Hulk, and Thor all worked together during Thor Ragnarok. Despite the best efforts of Helmut Zemo and the events of Civil War, our Avengers are still tight with one another. So, of course, those who remain at this point are going to get together and try to defeat Thanos. Why on earth would they decide to go their own ways at this point? We even see Captain America and Black Widow working together in the Endgame trailer, while lazy Tony Stark is floating around in space FaceTiming with Pepper Potts. Okay, we know he's really in mortal peril, but it's clear he's not the one who's going to unite the Avengers. Even Ant-Man managed to find his way to the Avengers headquarters on his own, and he was seemingly trapped forever in the quantum realm at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. The only part of this section of spoiler which seems unique enough to even be considered a spoiler is the portion which claims Tony Stark creates a new Infinity Gauntlet, and he and the Avengers go through time in order to collect the Infinity Stones. This is a popular theory, and there seems to be a lot of supporting evidence based on set photos, what we know of the MCU, and what went down during Infinity War. If you've seen the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, you know what happens when someone tries to hold an Infinity Stone with their bare hands. And it ain't pretty. We saw Karina declare she was tired of being a slave to the Collector, and that she was officially quitting, and well, she wasn't wrong about that. The good news is that she's definitely no longer a slave, but the bad part is she exploded. Peter Quill is a child of Ego, one of the elders of the universe, and even he was only able to hold the stone for a mere instant with the help of his fellow Guardians.
If he's a planet, how could he make a baby with your mother? He would smush her.
So the Avengers needing a device to contain a single Infinity Stone, let alone all of them, is pretty obvious. Many people believe Tony Stark will be integral to the success of our heroes because Doctor Strange chose to exchange his life for the Time Stone during Infinity War, after seeing a single future where the heroes win. But really, who else would create such a thing? Eitri, who created the original Infinity Gauntlet, got his hands smashed by Thanos, and could only complete Stormbreaker after poor Groot sacrificed an arm and a leg. Okay, just an arm, but still. As far as we know, the brilliant Shuri is gone, and Bruce Banner simply doesn't have the same resources as Tony. If we go with the logical assumption that our heroes are indeed going to collect the Infinity Stones, then Tony Stark creating a device to hold them seems like the clear next step. Why another gauntlet, though? Why not an Infinity Shield or an Infinity Chainsaw arm? At least think a little bit outside of the gauntlet.
Mark turned up to the Thor Ragnarok premiere and Instagram Live the first 20 minutes.
It even asserts that the original title of the movie was going to be Avengers Infinity Gauntlet, but was later changed after it was leaked by actress Zoe Saldana, who plays Gamora. First of all, we know Marvel Studios could pretty much name the movie Avengers Empty Your Pockets at this point, and we would still go see it. But that's just a terrible name. Why would they name the movie after an object from the previous film, especially considering the fact that it was damaged, if not destroyed, at the end of Infinity War? This part of the theory seems to hinge on an interview with Zoe Saldana, where she stated the Guardians just shot their part when it comes to Infinity War, the first part, and we all have to go back for Gauntlet later this year. And with that, Zoe joined the likes of actors Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland, who are constantly accused of revealing spoilers during interviews.
I'm not allowed to read the scripts because I'm so bad at keeping secrets for this exact reason.
The fact is that Marvel Studios likes to tease us as much as possible, and these actors absolutely know what they're doing in these situations. It's also possible that even if Infinity Gauntlet was being used, it was likely just a working title, while the true title was still being decided upon. Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn stepped up in defense of Zoe, saying it was most likely a simple mistake and nothing more. Sometimes the most simple theory is the correct one, and we think this definitely applies here. It's far more likely Zoe misspoke during an interview than she spoiled the name of a huge movie like Avengers Endgame. If she had, Marvel Studios executives probably would have thrown her off the cliffs of Vormir themselves. Another portion of the spoiler claims at one point Hawkeye must protect the unfinished Stark Gauntlet from Thanos' minions. He plays an instrumental role in Thanos' defeat. Now, there are several issues with this statement. The first is, who exactly are Thanos' minions at this point? His entire Black Order was wiped out during Infinity War, and we're guessing his daughter Nebula isn't returning his calls. Sure, there are plenty of other evil entities lurking around the MCU, including but not limited to the Skrulls, but it looks like Thanos was pretty tapped out in regards to his contacts by the end of Infinity War. If the spoiler had even bothered to state who would be helping out Thanos, it might sound slightly more believable. And if you've seen the trailer for Avengers Endgame, we're guessing you know why the part about Hawkeye is probably nonsense.
You didn't see that coming?
fans wondered if Clint would return not as Hawkeye, but as Ronin. And based on the trailer, this seems to be correct. If whoever leaked these spoilers knew anything about what was actually going on during Endgame, why would they call the character Hawkeye instead of Clint Barton or Ronin, both of which would be much more accurate? Of course, even the source of the spoiler believes the bulk of the plot will consist of our heroes traveling through time to collect the Infinity Stones. But there are still several subplots they claim will take place, one of which is Hulk's subplot centers on Banner and Hulk finally merging to become Professor Hulk. He is the one that ultimately wields the Stark Gauntlet against Thanos, losing his arm in the process. We have to admit, as far as predictions go, this one falls on the more sensible side of the scale. It's clear no mere mortal would be able to use all of the Infinity Stones at all, let alone live to tell about it. Thanos had an Infinity Gauntlet crafted by the legendary Eitri, and he still managed to hurt himself when he used the power of the Infinity Stones. There are only a handful of heroes left after Infinity War, meaning the potential pool of people who could use the Infinity Stones properly is pretty small. Pretty much all humans are right out of the question. Sorry guys, and Hulk does seem like an obvious choice. But there are some other contenders. Let's take a look at Nebula, a person who probably hates Thanos more than anyone else alive. And that's certainly saying something. Being the favorite child of Thanos is a dubious honor for sure, especially considering he threw his favorite child off a cliff during Infinity War. But Nebula grew up knowing she was the least favorite child, and constantly having parts of her body replaced whenever she would lose in battle. And you thought we were damaging kids by giving them participation trophies. After years of torment, much of which she attributed to Gamora as well as Thanos, Nebula was understandably feeling a little resentful of her sister by the time Guardians of the Galaxy rolled around. In the second movie, we saw the two siblings make an uneasy peace with one another, and they both fought against Thanos during Infinity War. In the comic books, it's Nebula who manages to get the Infinity Gauntlet away from Thanos, and uses it to undo all of the evil he's caused in the universe. And considering that she's at least partially machine already, it's not too crazy to think she may be able to wield it successfully in the MCU as well.
Can I say it?
No. I would imagine.
Can I just give him a little taste?
I wouldn't say too much.
It would be interesting to see how this would turn out in the MCU, given the differences in characters and storylines between the movies and the comic books. There's also Thor, who is strong enough to defeat even the Hulk, as we saw in Thor Ragnarok, and is among the long list of people with a personal vendetta against Thanos. But Thor has Stormbreaker, which is pretty much the anti-Thanos and Infinity Gauntlet weapon. This makes him seem like an unlikely candidate for Gauntlet wielder, even if his body probably could handle it. But as far as this part of the spoiler, Professor Hulk isn't a bad guess. And in fact, it's something many other fans have been predicting. The schism between Bruce Banner and the Hulk has been a core part of both the movies and comic books, and the Banner-Hulk connection is something which has been explored in Marvel movies. We all know Banner isn't crazy about the fact that he can turn into a massive, nearly unstoppable monster at a moment's notice. It's like being hangry times a million, and all the snacks in the world can't help him. But during Thor Ragnarok, we learned it's not exactly fun for Hulk either. He's not mindless, he's just used to appearing in the thick of battle and then completely losing consciousness for unpredictable periods of time. While he's on Sakaar, he's able to learn to speak and think about things other than smashing for once. And during Infinity War, we learn he's frankly tired of fighting Banner's battles for him and doesn't want to risk his life for a guy who has always resented him. Many feel introducing Professor Hulk would make the character much more useful in the MCU, and could lead to some potentially interesting scenarios. He has the intelligence of Banner, but the love of battle of the Hulk. We aren't saying it would be bad, or even that it definitely won't happen, just that predicting Professor Hulk is hardly impressive, and definitely doesn't prove the veracity of any of these spoilers. Wouldn't it be great to have a Marvel movie which centers around the relationship between Captain America and Iron Man? It could explore the various ways in which these two characters are the same, but also cover how they are different, and could feature them learning how to get past their differences and forge a strong bond with one another. Oh wait, that movie already exists, and it's called Captain America Civil War. You may have known that, but we're guessing the source of these rumors decided to skip this particularly poignant entry in the history of the MCU. Regarding Endgame, they claim the movie revolves around the relationship between Captain America and Iron Man. Just why? What could these two still have to sort out following Civil War? They already discussed their differences and opinions in the traditional Macho Man way, by beating the crap out of one another and making insincere promises to call one another. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers are both strong, important characters, and ones many fans predict may not survive Endgame. So while it wouldn't be surprising if they're heavily featured in the movie, we doubt their relationship will be one of the most important parts.
Where's Thor? He really sucks.
And speaking of Civil War, we all know Thor missed out on the airport fight.
I actually chose not to be in it. I was like, nah, busy.
But apparently, he's still waiting to work with his fellow Avengers, at least according to this source. They claim, at one point, Captain America and Thor fight Thanos. Timeline alterations have restored Mjolnir, and Cap wields it against Thanos to allow the others to escape, and is killed holding Thanos off. Well, now we can add Avengers Age of Ultron to the list of Marvel movies this source hasn't seen. Remember that whole scene where everyone tried to pick up Mjolnir and couldn't because even Captain America is still a weak, puny human when compared to the God of Thunder? CBI remembers. Not only can Captain America not wield Mjolnir, but that weapon is long gone, and Thor has a shiny new replacement. We were sad to see Mjolnir be crushed as well, but we have to face facts and realize it's gone, and there would be no point in bringing it back. If Mjolnir wasn't sufficient to stand up to Hela, how is it going to be useful against Thanos and the Infinity Stones? The source adds, Thor's subplot centers on him assembling an army to challenge Thanos. Captain Marvel joins him. This part isn't completely out of left field. Thor is supposed to be looking out not just for Asgard, but the Nine Realms as well. So it's possible he still has some useful allies out there. And frankly, at this point, getting an army would probably be more helpful than getting Mjolnir back.
What?
If Korg and Meek survived Thanos' assault on the Asgardian ship, maybe they can help him print out enough pamphlets to get a revolution started.
Piss off, Ghost!
As for Captain Marvel joining him, it's really too soon to say much about the prospect. Captain Marvel does have a history of traveling outside of Earth, but it remains to be seen what her role in the MCU will end up being. The source posits that only 2 of the original members of the Avengers, who they define as Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, and Black Widow, are going to survive Endgame. They claim Captain America is definitely not going to make it, but they don't bother to discuss who else is going to live or die. And we're going to go out on a limb here and assume it's because they have no clue.
I, up to that point, had smoked a lot of pot.
2 odd pieces of information about Endgame were included in the spoilers, and one involves Doctor Strange in a massive CGI battle. Allegedly, it was shot at a secret location and no expense was spared, making it epic. Who is he battling? No idea. What does this have to do with anything in Endgame? Who knows? We know that actress Tilda Swinton is expected to reprise her role as the Ancient One during Endgame.
Hello, Tiny. Oh, Mama. Hello.
But she's definitely a real person and not a CGI construct. Are they going to introduce a new villain only for Doctor Strange to battle against? That sounds pretty, well, strange.
It's strange. Maybe.
This is such a random and vague point, it's pretty hard to really refute. The other bit of information claims several MCU movies are revisited and retconned, probably not permanent, such as the Avengers retrieving the Power Stone, creating a timeline where the Guardians of the Galaxy never came together. With Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse out, it seems like the time for multiverses is upon us. These are huge plot devices within the pages of the comic books, so it's reasonable to predict they will eventually make their way onto the big screen. Plus, we have heard them being mentioned in previous Marvel movies. During Doctor Strange, the Ancient One said she had used her powers to look out over many different timelines, but was unable to see past the moment of her own demise. Then, during Infinity War, her protege, Doctor Strange, famously looked at over 14 million possible futures, only to find a single one where Thanos was defeated. Still, if these events don't take place during the main timeline of the MCU, they're not really relevant to the overall storyline. It might be interesting to see a scenario in which the Guardians never meet, but with all there is to be done in Endgame, we can't see them spending too much time on these what-if scenarios. But the source of the spoilers predicts another internal battle involving Nebula. Nebula's subplot centers on her efforts to redeem herself. At one point, she fights her murderous past self. Redeem herself from what? She's been pretty terrible to Gamora and the other Guardians of the Galaxy in the past, but they already made amends during Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We guess the mysterious source didn't bother to see that movie, which is a shame because it was quite good. Hopefully, they have at least listened to the soundtrack. Even if Nebula was feeling bad about her past actions, what could she possibly do that would do more good in the universe than defeating Thanos? We ain't saying Nebula doesn't have any issues, but this hardly seems like the time for her to be fighting with herself, literally or figuratively. Not only would this not make sense with the overall plotline so far, but it doesn't even make sense for her character. In fact, this may be the least sensible part of this entirely former 4chan post, and that's certainly saying something.
There's enough spoilers! You said too much!
We know you have your choice of supposed Avengers Endgame fan theories and spoilers out there, so what do you think of these ones? Do you think there's any validity to these spoilers, or do you think they're mere guesses? Let us know in the comments section down below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more debunked videos. Thanks for watching!